We talk a lot on this show about succession planning, and it's because it's really the end of every entrepreneurial's journey. And today we have Ron Harvey from Ottawa, who has gone through the journey. He has built a successful business over 30 years, and he has gone through a full succession planning. Very successful, makes his clients happy, and now he's on the other side enjoying life. And Ron's going to share some insights on how to get your succession planning in place and start planning it today. Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. For an entrepreneur, succession is a reality for all of them, right? Someday. Might not be today, but someday. And one topic that we discuss on this podcast is the importance of succession planning as an entrepreneur. Like, believe it or not, one day you're going to be ready to retire. And you want to enjoy the fruits of your labor that you've cultivated over years and years. And to do it right, if you really want to do it right, it takes planning, preparation, and the right mindset. And today we're talking to somebody who's gone through the process and had a really successful exit from his business. We're going to dig into his story. We're going to show how he's able to successfully put together a succession plan, look after his clients, and still keep his hand in the industry that he loves so much. So our guest today is Ron Harvey. You know, Ron Harvey's been an advisor for over 30 years, and I think I've known him for most of those 30 years. He was a senior advisor with IPC. He was with us for well over 9 years. He even got our IPC Legacy Award in 2022. And before IPC, he was an advisor and a branch manager with 2 other firms. So he's seen the, what's out there. He also does a ton of volunteer roles. He's the chair of the board for the Financial FP Canada. He's been a board member since 2017. He was a board member of the CPA Ontario at the time of the merger of the 3 accounting bodies in 2014 until 2017. And he was a chair of the CGA Ontario at the time of the merger. And he is currently the Fellow of the CPA Ontario and a CP Canada Fellow. So he's a busy man even when he wasn't seeing clients. So my good friend, Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. So in your own words, Ron, everybody wants to know, what's your story? How did you get here? Like, maybe describe how you got into the business, how you built up your business, and then what happened then.
I was the CEO of a not-for-profit association, but I was looking for something different. And I said to myself, I'd like to become an entrepreneur. I'm getting tired of having to deal with staff, management, boards, that kind of thing. And at the same time, a fellow professional had recently opened a financial planning office in Ottawa. And I joined him in the summer of 1992. And I will say that, having never been a financial planner before that, it was the best professional decision of my life. I've never looked back, and everything has evolved since that August start, because it was August in 1992 that I joined the financial planning community.
Wow, that's fantastic. And then how did you build up your business? Like, you came right in the business fresh, right? You had to build it up from scratch the old-fashioned way.
I built up the business with 0 clients.
Right.
I did the typical thing. Let's talk to family, friends, neighbors, whether or not they're going to be good clients, not clients at all. It was a struggle for the first few years, but with the support of my family, I persevered. And I'd known that all entrepreneurial business is the toughest part is the first 5 years.
Right.
If you can survive that, then you maybe have a chance of doing something. And it was almost 5 years, and I'm thinking, is this what I really want to do? But it was, deep down. I got more engaged with professionals, with clients, and the community, the financial planning community, even though it was in the early stages as we know it now. There was no CRO or anything thought like that back in 1992.
Right.
That's how it all began.
Oh, and that's great. And I know that you usually, you lead with the financial plan. You're a true advisor, right? You really understand your clients. You've been part of their lives for a long period of time. You know everything about them. You're there and you trust. So, as you built your successful business, when did succession planning start to come into your mind? Like, as I said, after 30 years, you have a pretty tight relationship with your clients, and you've done a good job.
Well, that's the hardest part was, but I realized at some point I can't do this forever because, if illness happens and I can't, or, as one gets older, your chances of dying are greater than when you're 35 and you don't think of it at that point.
Right.
I thought I'm going to have to start to prepare to exit the industry. And so I started my succession planning thought process in 2017. But what really helped is, if I'm going to succeed in this industry, I realized that, I needed to find someone to succeed me who shared the same core values as I did.
Exactly.
And we worked from there. Because I wanted to make sure that my clients were going to continue to be as well served as I served them up to that point.
Well, I think this is, the key point, and one of the reasons I think you'd be great, you can be great on this podcast, is you went in with the right mindset. And as I said, we've known each other for quite some time. Yeah. And the thing that we had always talked about is your clients and your principals. And, as I said, lead with that plan. And you want somebody who actually will continue down that path, because you could go, well off the mark. I know advisors who have, done some succession or sold their business, and then all of a sudden their clients are calling them, complaining they're not getting what they had before. But this was really part of your mindset when you stepped into this, wasn't it?
It really was, because I thought, what do I want my legacy to be? And I've used this very often since that point. I said, I want my clients to be as well served or better served 5 years after I'm gone. And I want them to stay with my successor advisor, so that I know what sort of services they're getting, because I'm also a client.
Absolutely. So now you've made this decision. You're like, okay, I have to start thinking about it. So what was the process like? What did you go through to get to this sort of end result that ended up to be quite good for everybody?
Well, I was actually very fortunate, because back in summer of 2015, I hired a new assistant. And I knew within the first year that this new assistant, she would make a great advisor one day. She didn't believe me at all at that point.
She was a doubter, but
this is the size. So what I did is I started grooming Jennifer to become a successor earlier than I even started talking to my clients about it. Mm-hmm. But what I wanted to do is make sure everybody's comfortable, because my clients needed to know that I wasn't going to do this forever. And I shared that with them, because as they were retiring, or someone already retired, I would get questions from clients. Mm-hmm. When are you going to retire? And I said, well, actually, interesting you talk about that. I don't have a firm date, but here's my plan. Right. And I shared my plan with my clients, so there was no surprise to them when I stopped having my name on their client statements and they're coming to meet with me. And that to me was critical to do that.
And going through that process, now that you've gone through the other side, what was your client's reaction as you were telling them? And what is it today? And has there been really any changes?
Well, the greatest thing about that is the client's reaction was all positive as the process was going forward. I had nobody saying, well, what am I going to do if you're not here? And I said, well, if I'm not here, I'm going to make sure that my successor advisor is got the same core values and principles as I do. And we're going to have the relationship the same. And I said, in fact, what I did is in mid to late 2017, I started bringing Jennifer, who was still my assistant at that point, into my client meetings. Uh-huh. So she got to observe the relationship directly.
Yeah, firsthand.
And it was perfect for her. So she got a sense of what my style was. I mean, she had a pretty good idea, but she got to see what the interaction was face to face with clients. And clients got to see that I had as much confidence in her, that she was not just the ones who booked the meetings and did the paperwork. She was actually engaged in the meetings. Didn't do much talking in the beginning.
Right.
But she was observing more than participating, but part of it. And so there's no surprise to my clients.
Well, that's part of the sort of planning process, right? And in other words, if you tried to do this as a sudden thing, I don't think you'd have nearly the success you did as this gradual change and introduction and bringing Jennifer into the fold. And also, I would imagine that she got to see you in action and probably mimicked a lot of what you did.
Well, you'd have to ask her that for sure. Yeah, I know that she did. because I had bought a book of business from a retiring advisor back in 2010. And I realized that at some point, I'm going to need to make sure that we have consistency in approach to clients when I'm the person who's not there. Him and I were actually pretty consistent in terms of our approach with clients. And it made that transition much better, so that when it was my turn 10 years later, just to, no longer be the primary advisor, it was much, much easier for us to do that.
As you can hear Ron's story, you can see the key is planning. If you're thinking about succession and you're thinking about what your options are, this would be a great time to have a coffee and discuss it. And I've gone through this process myself. In fact, I've gone through it several times, so I know what it's like. If you want to look at what your options are, what you should be doing, when the timing is, love to have a virtual coffee. Just go to the show notes, look for the link, and we can set up a coffee. Another consideration is, what about your staff? I know, my team is everything, and so you feel the same way. You've had probably the same, team in place for quite some time. How were they in the transition, and what were some of their concerns, and how did you overcome those?
Okay, well, we did make a change, because originally my plan was to sell my book to Jennifer, and then she would take over everything, including my office, the rent, go and hire staff, all that, the stuff that is not what you want to do as the advisor, is all the administrative things and other extraneous activities.
Right.
But then along came, someone told me about the IPC Pinnacle program.
Right.
And so I had some great conversations with senior leadership at IPC on how that might work. So we went the Pinnacle route, and the advantage is Jennifer gets to be the advisor. She doesn't have to manage an office at the same time. And the clients didn't have to share her time with trying to make sure that she's hiring the right people. And so she was able to develop her own staff through the regional office of IPC here in Ottawa, and it's worked fantastically. I mean, I've been to the office in my transition period and my last farewell opportunity I had.
Right.
And I've also been there as a client, and it's a very professional office, and clients haven't noticed any difference at all.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is there anything that you wish you knew then that you now know now that you would give, like some tips to people? Because I know that I talk to like almost daily people who are going through the same process that you're going to, and some struggle with it. Some are very good with the mindset,
Right.
but if you had to give some advice to those people, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
The best advice I think I could give anybody is share what your goals and your dreams are. Share your processes and keep them as simple as you possibly can. I know in my 30 years as an advisor, the industry got so complicated. And if you go right back to the simplest things, what do you want to do? You want to ensure your clients can have financial peace of mind for the rest of their lives. Period. That's it.
Period.
That's really the job of a financial planner, is to make sure your clients have peace of mind. All the ways you do that don't matter. So to your question is, the important thing to do is make sure you share those practices. You don't have a magic secret formula that only you can provide financial advice. If you do, you're going to have a hard time having anybody succeed you.
Right. Absolutely. And it's something that I think it's a good point, and one that we should stress is you see it all the time. The simpler that it is for someone to take over your business, the more valuable that business is. And, one of the mistakes we see in a lot of entrepreneurs, not just in the wealth management business,
Right.
we see this in business after business. If you make it too much around you, it's very hard for someone to replicate that in the future. And therefore, the expectation of the client somewhat diminishes because, Ron used to do this and now we're doing something else. And, where's the consistency? But I think that's a very important tip, is you keep it simple, keep your processes simple, and it's, much easier to go about the succession plan and give that continuity to your clients.
Absolutely.
So now you've gone over to the other side. You finally, handed over the keys to Jennifer. So the other question that a lot of times people who go through this struggle with is, what am I going to do with my time? Now, I used to spend all my days seeing clients and managing fires, and it was fun and exciting. is it going to be like that on the other side? So, I know that you've kept yourself busy, so maybe share, some of those stories and what you've been doing now.
Yeah, it would be too hard to just stop being an advisor one day, then wonder what to do the next. I've been engaged in the industry for quite some time, and as a member of FP Canada's board, and now as chair of the board, the advantage I have of that, without being an actual practicing advisor, is I can observe what's happening across the country, and because we have an international affiliation, I can see what happens with financial planning regimes around the world. And those are things which I will bring back to my advisor and to dealerships as well, of things that I see, which you can't see. It's a forest and trees thing. You can't see the bigger picture when you're trying to manage the client relationship.
True.
And now I get to use my 30 years as a planner to look and see, okay, what do other countries do better? What do we do better? How do we incorporate the best? And that's really my role as chair of FP Canada, of trying to work with advisors around the country on that board and other non-advisor public representatives, and trying to make it better. So that keeps me pretty engaged in the end.
I was going to say, that keeps you busy right there.
And the advantage of being chair at this point, it gives me way more time to do a lot of the board work during the day and not have to do it at evenings, so that I can still lead a normal person's life. So it's a transition to retirement. At some point, this ends too.
Sure.
But the other piece of what we're able to do is my wife and I are able to travel a lot more freely. Our kids are in Western Canada and California, so they're not exactly nearby.
Right.
But we get to go visit them more often.
Right.
And, in 2023, we got to go to Singapore. Our goal this year is to go to New Zealand and Australia.
That'll be great.
Because we can. The main reason why you're going to do that, because we can.
Because I can. Exactly.
Yeah. And the thing is, realize we're getting older, but we're still spry enough and engaged enough. Do the things now, because no point waiting for 10 years. And then one or the other may not be here or may not be able to do that. So we're enjoying life as best we can now.
Well, I think that's an excellent point, and one that I certainly have discussions with other advisors is, do it while you can. To your point, You're still spry enough. It's a big, wonderful world out there to be seen. And, I've seen also people on the other side. They put it off too long. And then there's this big list of things that they wanted to do outside of work, and they never get a chance to do it. So I think you're very lucky. Not lucky. I think this was all on purpose. I think
that was all part of this. All part of the planning process, Chris. The planning is not just the successor planning. Well, that's the biggest part. And I tell you, I've had conversations with clients who are neighbors and friends who are thrilled with the relationship ongoing. And I don't bring it up. They do, because I thought, I'm staying out of this. But when they tell me that just love working with Jennifer, that's all I want to hear.
I don't think that any entrepreneur would like to hear anything other than the legacy that they have created. And in your case, 30 years of creating that legacy continues to live on. And it's because of those processes, because of your philosophy and your values, that can continue to live on, and you get to enjoy your life and continue to do the things that you've always wanted to do. I think it's wonderful.
And I have a great relationship as a client with my successor advisor. The artist meeting was the first one when I had to remember, I got to think like the client, not ask the advisor questions. But that's worked out very, very well.
That would be a weird scenario where you used to be the person giving the advice, and now you actually have to take the advice. You probably are a terrible client. I know I'm a terrible client. No one wants me as
oh no,
that I'm on the other side.
I'm sure that if you asked Jennifer, I'd be, I wouldn't be her worst client, but I haven't asked her that.
I'm going to ask her that next time I see her.
Okay.
So Ron, at this point, I do something called the rapid fire. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and the first thing that comes to mind. And so the first thing is, what are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about the relationships that I built with my clients that continues on when I'm not there. As one goes off into retirement and older age, if you want, those are the things that you remember. What do you remember most about it? Not the rate of return. It's the relationship that clients are able to live their lives as they chose, with guidance that I help provide. That's one. And the other big piece is that is let's do all the things we can as long as we can.
I love that. And give it back. So that actually leads into the next question, which is, what is your most memorable client experience?
My most memorable client experience was a client who didn't think that I would be able to help him because he thought that he knew better than I did. He says, and I said, well, if you know more than I do, why are you here?
Right.
Well, I just wanted to validate what I'm saying. I said, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. We're going to change the relationship of where you and your money are going to go together. Because I said, what you want to do, you can't.
Right.
Because you're going to run out of money too soon. So let's change the direction, and let's have and it was a single guy who came in. I said, let me meet with your wife, the two of you together. Let's see how we can develop a family plan. And that was one of my most memorable relationships I've ever had.
I love it. I think that's great. And finally, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as somebody who really cared about his clients, and was always remembered as somebody who worked hard, did as best as he could for his clients, and always had the client's interest first. If I can be remembered as that, then my career as a financial planner will have been well worth the 30 years that it was to me.
Well, I think you're definitely going to be remembered for that. I'm also going to say that I think you'll be remembered for someone who gave back to the industry, and you have throughout your whole career. You continually tried to make the industry a better place for everyone to work. So I think that's going to be part of your legacy too. Whether you like it or not, that's going to be part of you.
Well, I'm quite happy with that, but I don't want to blow my own horn on that one.
All right. I'll do it for you then.
Okay.
So my rant is, I think this has been great, Ron, because it really does illustrate mindset. And as I said, every entrepreneur has to face the fact at some point that succession planning is inevitable. And especially in a successful business like yours, Ron, where you're 30 years in the making, you want to make sure that primarily your clients are well looked after. You want to make sure who's coming over, has your principles, your values, understands and sticks with your processes that have made you successful. And finally, there's the whole, at some point, letting go and enjoying life. And you can still keep your hand in it. But, to your point, there's so many things you want to do, and you want to do them while you're young enough to do them. So I think you're really what everyone should aspire to when they look through that whole succession planning process. With that, is there anything you want to add for our audience?
The only thing I would suggest to your audience is plan well in advance from when the expected exit date will be. It's a journey, it's not an event.
And if you had to give advice, how many years do you think to do it right? And I don't know how many you took, but how many do you think to do it right should people be thinking about it so they get in the right mindset?
I would say 3 to 5 years. I did 3 years before I handed over the reins as being the backup advisor to the primary advisor, and then 2 years of post selling my book part, but being part of the relationships. I think that works best. And, so I like 5 years as a window so that it's seamless to clients. And that's really what you want, is to make it as seamless as possible so the clients are not wondering what happens next. They already know.
Right. No, I love it. If you're thinking about your succession plan, I'd love to have a virtual coffee. I can go over what your options are, what your timing might look like, and some of the other people you might talk to who have gone through this process. Just go to the show notes, look at the link, and we can set up a time. Ron Harvey, successful entrepreneur, successful going through succession planning. Thank you very much for being part of the show.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over a virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.